Welcome back, friends. Today we're doing something a little interesting. Now, I know you've seen my Dynasty trade shows before. We've got a new episode of that on the way, so if you haven't already seen the previous episodes, go check them out as we have another Trade Titans on the way. But today I figured we'd do something a little interesting and unique where I play in a ton of Dynasty leagues, as most of you guys know, a lot of them with you, the listeners and the fans. It's an awesome community we're building over here. But I wanted to pull 5 real trades that happened across my listener leagues this week just to unpack them a little bit and also give some context on the teams that made them as a part of the review. I do find that there's a lot of videos on the internet and a lot of Dynasty creators that do trade reviews, and they'll take people's trades in similar to like I do on the Dynasty Trade Titans show. But sometimes you don't get the full picture because you don't see the rosters and the thought processes. And so I'm going to give you my in-depth thoughts on some of the trades this week that we're going to go through, why I like them or dislike them, and then what I would suggest you kind of do as far as either replicating these trades or staying far away from them. Now, the first one is a trade I made today. I'm going to pull it up right now. I did this trade, and so a little context here just so you guys can gather some more thought process on like how to make these decisions mid-season and where to take your roster. I'm a 7-5 team in this league, and I will show you the team in a second. But what I ended up doing was I realized I was kind of a pretender here. I actually came out of the startup that we did this last offseason knowing I wanted to punt, but kind of played myself into a playoff spot somehow on accident. Now, I definitely didn't intend to be as competitive as a team as I ended up being, but sometimes that's the nature of just being too damn good. No, I'm just playing. But I did end up kind of playing myself into contention, but I realized I'm still not a true contender. As you'll see on the team in a second, I have 5 26 first-round picks, so definitely very much retooling for next year. However, probably was still hanging in there a little too much and ruining my own draft pick for my positioning next year by continuing to win games. And on top of that, just looking to get younger. So as you can see on the screen, I did trade away Davante Adams, who's currently wide receiver 6 on the season and doesn't look like he's slowing down. I expect him to be plenty productive in next year's outing as well, assuming Matt Stafford and the Rams decide to run it back. The only way I see them actually, not continuing is if the Rams do win the Super Bowl this year. I could potentially see Stafford and Adams hanging it up at the same time, but I don't anticipate that to happen. Regardless, what I ended up doing was sending away Davante Adams in a 27 second in order to get Troy Franklin in a 27 first. And so obviously my thought process here was, one, I want to tier up on my picks and I want to start stacking more feature firsts because I already have 5 26 firsts, but I only have 1 27 first, so I wanted to get a second one. And on top of that, I do think Troy Franklin at age 22, attached to Bo Nix and having that previous chemistry from their time in Oregon together, I think Troy Franklin's got a lot of upside, to potentially be a solid wide receiver 2 of the future and maybe even an alpha someday as Cortland Sutton ends up aging out a bit. Now, he has had a little bit of problems with drops lately, and I'd like to see him shore up his hands, but as a prospect, I think Troy Franklin still has a lot of upside. So just to take you guys through the thought process here, hop in the comments. Let me know on this first trade. Did I win this trade? Are you happy with the return that I got here? I thought it was a fair trade for both sides, as this player is a complete contender, already has 10 wins on the season, and was looking to bolster his wide receiver room, which was looking a little bit weak going into the playoffs. And a 27 first for him that's probably going to be projected late. Wasn't too much to give up for your wide receiver 6, and I was able to get a young guy in return. As you can see here, just for more context, this is the team I was talking about. So I do have Brock Purdy, Devon Achane, Javonte Williams, now Troy Franklin, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Michael Pittman. It's a tight end premium league starting 2 tight ends. It's a start 11 format, one of my favorites to play. I have Isaiah Likely and A.J. Barner. So, young core here with some stuff to grow. Matt Collins and Josh Downs. Matt Collins obviously kind of just being a flex play here. And Josh Downs hopefully still have an upside. My quarterback room's really strong with Mahomes and Burrow, so I'll probably be tearing off Purdy this offseason, and so I'll walk you through some of these things that I end up doing, and you guys can follow along with my moves on this league as we go along. But, here I also have Hampton on the bench, Burrow coming back from IR like I had mentioned before, and even down here, guys like Noah Fant, who I'm not entirely out on for the future. And then, as I mentioned, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 26 first-round picks. 3 of them being top 5 picks, which is pretty nice. And then obviously, as you can see now, I have 2 27 firsts as well. So that's where I wanted to start with you guys and showcase that first trade. The second trade that I am going to bring up is a trade that happened in this league. It just happened a moment ago, actually, in our Discord hangout. So if you're not already a member of the free Discord, go ahead and click the link in the description here. You can join the Discord. If you feel so inclined to get some of the upper tiers of the Discord, feel free to subscribe to my Patreon, which is on the Community Hub page of my website, dynastypricecheck.com. And you'll get even more access to me through the Discord, as well as, strategy sessions with me. And we do roster reviews and consultations and break your team down. But in the Discord, we were having a little general hangout, a bunch of people on voice chat from my listener leagues and from the community talking Dynasty trades. And this was actually a live trade that was negotiated during the hangout and executed. I thought it was cool. But we had Jaden Higgins move for a 27-second and a 26th, 3rd, and 4th round pick. And quite frankly, I thought this was a good trade again for both sides. Personally, I think Jaden Higgins still has a lot of upside. He hasn't flashed a lot in his rookie season so far, but he absolutely has upside to continue to grow in this Texans offense that, outside of Nico Collins and then, a little bit of Dalton Schultz action here and there, doesn't have too many pass catching options. So I do think Jaden Higgins is one of those guys that could take a massive leap in his second year, and you still might be able to buy him for a discounted price right now because of that. This is one of them that I, again, think is good for both sides here. The guy who's getting Jaden Higgins had a flurry of excess picks because he's kind of also a retooling roster, had been accumulating a lot of liquidity, wanted to start deploy it, to gear up while he still has a lot of firsts in next year's draft. And the other team is someone who's in a very strong rebuild and was looking to accumulate a little bit more picks because, quite frankly, he took a lot of gambles and it wasn't really panning out the way that he had hoped coming out of the startup draft. And so now he was obviously trying to make a little bit of a retooling move here by gaining extra liquidity for the offseason. Like I said, fair value, I think. If you want to buy Jaden Higgins, it's probably going to take more than a second, and it did here, a 3rd and a 4th. And so hopefully some of these real-life examples are showing you guys what true values are instead of just pulling them online and hearing tweets about what people say they're doing. These are trades that happened in the last couple of days. So let's hop to the next example here. We're going to do 2 more for you. This is a trade that happened just the other day, actually 2 days ago, in one of my other listener leagues. And so as you can see here, we had a team who is an immediate contender and is a top 3 seed going into the playoffs here, really wanting to upgrade his quarterback room off of Tua Tagovailoa and move up to get a better option. And we had another team in Love Lambeau here who is 3-8 in a hard rebuild and definitely just needs to accumulate more liquidity for the future. So he ends up sending away Jordan Love to get Tua a 28 first and a 28 second. And yes, those 28 picks are far away, but they are still 1st and 2nd round picks. And after this next offseason, we'll still have some decent, liquid value on the market. Now, as a contending roster, totally understand trying to move off Tua and still getting a young quarterback like Jordan Love back. I actually think this is a really good price on Jordan Love. He's normally probably a 5th round Dynasty Superflex startup pick, and you just got him for the equivalent of a 1st and a 2nd, really. At this point, Tua means very little to me, but I could understand that, maybe he gets a later career resurgence like a Daniel Jones or a Sam Darnold if he gets really lucky in the right system. So again, as a retooling roster, rebuilding roster like Love Lambeau, I thought this was good value. You end up moving off Jordan Love, you get a 1st back, you get a little bit of a flyer in Tua and an extra 2nd. And for the contending roster, I think very cheap price to buy a young upside quarterback like Jordan Love that's playing well on a Packers team. So regardless, again, these are trades that I think benefit both teams based off their certain circumstances. And that's the true staple of a good dynasty trade, right? Obviously, occasionally you're going to get fleeces. Occasionally you're going to get terrible trades. That's never what you really want to see in your leagues. I think the best dynasty trades are ones where both teams are seeing the value that they're getting. And I think both teams in this aspect got a lot of value, and the reasoning behind making these trades made a lot of sense. Now, I am going to highlight the next one, and I don't mean to put anybody on blast, so that is not my goal if you're in my listener leagues here. I do use the leagues sometimes to make content, and I think this is a good example of a trade that was a bit of a panic sell. And so that would be this team, panicking a little bit off the previous performances of Lamar Jackson and wanting to bring in Bo Nix and A.J. Brown. I personally think Lamar Jackson is worth more than this. I think that there probably should be like a pick swap included in here, probably a first-round pick on the Bo Nix side and a second-round pick on the Lamar Jackson side, really to even out the deal. Now, obviously, after A.J. Brown's performance today, this trade looks a little bit better as A.J. Brown's kind of looking like the A.J. Brown of old, putting up 33 points today. Now, again, on this Eagles offense, I'm not exactly sure how long that continues as they have not looked fantastic throughout the start of this season. But regardless, there was a trade actually that went down in another one of my leagues, which I'm going to highlight in a moment, for Lamar Jackson that I thought was better representation of his value. But here I could understand why you make the trade. You are an immediate contender and you need extra pieces. So getting A.J. Brown probably does help boost your contending upside. And while still getting Bo Nix kicked back, you are still getting a high upside young superflex quarterback. Not the worst of trades, but again, I do like the Lamar Jackson side of this trade, and I would prefer the Lamar Jackson side here pretty heavily. But I'm also not as high on Bo Nix as I think some people in the Dynasty community are. Regardless, if you were wondering what it takes to trade for a Lamar Jackson, sometimes you might get lucky, and it's a Bo Nix and A.J. Brown. We're going to highlight another Lamar Jackson trade in just a moment. Now, the next trade I was going to highlight here is actually another trade that I did, and I will pull it up right here. So as you can see here, I am an ultimate contending roster in this league. I'm actually 11-1. As you can see behind me here, I am 11-1. My team right now is Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, Chase Brown, Stephon Diggs. I had to play Darius Slayton this week, and Tyler Lockett. My wide receiver room is struggling. David Njoku, Mike Gesicki, Rico Dowdle, Javonte Williams, Daniel Jones. I have Stroud, Vidal. I've got, guys like Hubbard back down here, T. Higgins, who's out, Drake London, who's out, Sam Laporta, who's on IR. So as you can see, your boy was in ultimate panic mode. Garrett Wilson, who's on IR. So yeah, just alone here, T. Higgins, Garrett Wilson, and Drake London. My three top guys are all out, right? And luckily, on top of a team that's 11-1, I've kind of put on a little bit of a masterclass in this league here, where I have I have 4 26 firsts in this league. So I've been stacking a lot of this 26 class. I really, really like a lot of the prospects in here, contrary to popular opinion. And I will have plenty of upcoming Dynasty rankings for rookie videos coming out where we can unpack it all. But as you can see, this roster was looking bleak at this point, and it still is based off all the injuries. But what I ended up doing was I moved Josh Downs, Keaton Mitchell, Xavier Worthy, and 2 second-round picks, one of them projected to be very early and the other one to be projected mid, in order to get some more contending pieces after struggling with all the injuries I had sustained. And so I was able to get back Stephon Diggs, T. Higgins, and Chase Brown. Keep in mind the roster that made this move with me is, again, like lower middle tier, so firmly in like a retooling mode. I wouldn't say he's in a full rebuild, but definitely needed to start looking more towards the future here, as he was more than a bottom half team and needed some extra liquidity and capital for the future. Now, I won't lie, on paper, I do think I won this trade a little bit comparatively to saying everything's perfectly fair. But at the same time, for a roster like his that is stuck in the middle and on the lower middle and really needed to start stacking some youth and upside, I think Josh Downs and Xavier Worthy are two guys that still have a ton of potential in this league to become very fantasy relevant. And Keaton Mitchell might be, kind of that change of pace guy in Baltimore that has some sleeper PPR upside. One of the only few running backs that are active in the league to post a sub 4.40. And obviously you saw him find the end zone this week with some upside. So maybe as Derrick Henry ages out, he could be a sneaky buy. And then those seconds does give him some liquidity and buying power. Stephon Diggs had no place on his roster, and then getting the Bengals stack here. I'm not a big T. Higgins guy, to be completely frank with you. I took him as a part of this deal simply because I needed the wide receiver depth. But Chase Brown, I thought I got for a good price here, as his playoff schedule is phenomenal, and as someone who's 11-1 and hopefully going to secure a first-round bye here, then this should stack me with a good running back option for the playoffs. Now, as you saw, my roster is suffering from an incredible amount of injuries, so I really need Drake London and T. Higgins to come back to kind of firmly plant me as a contender again here. Losing Sam Laporta was tough here, so this might be a league I end up not pulling it all the way out in, but with 426 first waiting in the wing, I feel comfortable with my ability to be a long-standing contender. Now, finally, we are going to go over one last trade here, and then we will keep it moving. This is a trade that happened earlier today in one of my other Dynasty leagues where Breece Hall was shipped away to a contending roster in exchange for a 27 first and second going to a more rebuilder. Again, I think this is a great trade for both sides. I wanted to try to highlight trades that I thought were pretty fair and, show the reasoning behind making them so that you guys can replicate them in your own leagues. And this is one I found to be very fair. Breece Hall, I think next year gets out of the Jets and has a ton more upside in the future, depending on where he signs. I could see him go into a roster that's a bit more contending, as I'm sure Breece Hall wants to show the full potential of his skill set, and after being trapped in New York the last several years, feels limited. On top of that, he is a running back, though, in a contract year, and whenever you have a situation like that, he does carry a certain amount of risk. And so as a rebuilding roster like Jonesy was here, he wanted to get some more liquidity and get some firsts into his lineup, and getting a first and second for a guy that has some uncertainty and is just a running back in general that doesn't hold their value as well as wide receivers. I thought this was a totally fair move and a good trade for both sides. So this is probably what Breece Hall is worth, in Dynasty at this point anyway. So there you have it, guys. There are 6 real Dynasty trades that happened over the last couple days in my leagues. If you want to submit more of your trades to be featured on the Trade Titans show or be featured in any of these videos, the best way to do that is to join the free Discord down below in the description, like I said. If this video helped you out at all, please leave a like and comment, or let me know what you thought about any of the trades in this video. I am live streaming every single day here on YouTube, Twitch, and TikTok. So if you haven't already checked me out across platforms, please do so. Same username everywhere, Dynasty Price Check, or visit my website if you want to get your roster broken down and get a full Dynasty detox, which is my Dynasty roster reviews. Like I said, available on my website, dynastypricecheck.com. Also, if you feel so inclined to sign up for the Patreon so that you can get extra access to me through the Discord and get monthly strategy sessions where I break down a Dynasty roster for you each time, or we iterate and build, construct 3-year plans for your roster, and I give you insight to all the guys I like in your upcoming rookie class and my Dynasty buy low market movers. That is going to be your best way to get it. Thank you guys so much for your continued support, and I will see you tomorrow for another video then. Cheers, and have a happy holiday weekend with your families.